Welcome back. Thanks for joining me. If you're new, this is another weekly update on my vermicomposting systems. Here in my first vermi bag tote, I came across a large bunch of worms in a good worm ball. They were gathered around some banana that I had placed in the bin. I always mix up my regular totes really well because the castings tend to stay wet towards the bottom and I want to distribute the moisture throughout. There was a lot of food left over in this particular worm ball, so I wasn't going to give too much food or put too much food into this bin for this week. So I'm only going to give it one piece of fresh food and then put the grit on and cover it up for the next week. My totes are actually running not too bad this cycle. I tend to have a lot of moisture in them in the summertime, but I'm not running across that. And I'm unsure what I'm doing differently this time around that's making them more manageable. Moving over to my second regular tote, this is the one that I'm doing as the trash bin style. I did put the bait tray in here for one of the last two harvesting of worms that I'm going to do for my breeder bin. I think I have somewhere between 200 and 250, so I think that's a better amount to start with. And then as usual, I'm just going to put the cardboard into the feeding for pocket feeding, and pocket feeding just means that instead of distributing it all over or in half of the bin, it's just in a small pocket where the food is going. This is how I'm trying to manage the moisture content and trying to manage how much cardboard I add at a time by just giving it different pockets. And I'm not digging into this bin too much. I'm just making sure that if I have multiple pockets at a time, that the food is breaking down and nothing's going sour, so as the bin would have any smells. I'm going to sprinkle some grit all over the top, and then this bin is set up for the following week. On to the first of the two vermi bag totes that I have. In this particular vermi bag tote, it's been the one that was harvested right along with the regular totes, and it's doing very well. My biggest issue with the vermi bag totes is that they're really dry on the top, and then all the moisture settles to the bottom. So when I look at the bins weekly, I do tend to pull what's at the bottom up towards the top. This one didn't appear that it needed much messing with this week. I just made sure to give it a good size feeding and then covered it back up for the next week. It didn't need any water added to it, which is normal for the summertime. In the second vermi bag tote, this one is starting to dry out. I have a bunch of worms in this bin that are looking really good, getting up to size, and I put the bait tray in this one. I hope that it doesn't impact the bin too much, as I did just put a bunch of wisps and junior worms in here from the previous breeder bag experiment. But this one also was very clumpy towards the bottom, so I initially was going to put all of the castings to one side and put new castings in, but I spread the castings back out and just put some cardboard, mixed in some drier cardboard into this. This one as well didn't need any water added to it because the stuff on the bottom was a lot muddier than the other bins, even muddier than my regular totes. I did give this one a good size feeding, as there are the younger worms, and it's my impression that they do have a voracious appetite, so I want to make sure there's enough food in the bin to sustain the worm colony that's here. And then I put the bait tray back in. It's empty, but if there's any small worms in there, I want them to get back into the castings. And then I mixed up my breeder bin. I still am getting the dry edges, and it might just be the shape of the tote itself that I'm using, but I wanted to incorporate all of that drier cocoa core into the mixture. And I did give it quite a large feeding of very moisture heavy food, and then added the grit to this and then sprayed it down because I want to keep this one a lot wetter than what I normally run my bins to encourage the worms to move around, because it seems that the wetter the bin, the more they enjoy it. So I'm going to go against my normal method and try to keep this a little bit wetter than usual. And that brings me to my final system, my flow-through system, which is the Vermibag Mini. This has been running extra dry, and it's the only system that's really been running super dry over the summer. So I did take a good amount of time and made sure to spray the top of the castings down as much as I possibly could. I am going to go through and take out another selection of worms in the bait tray. So I did want to make sure that they would move towards the top to the food and also not dry out in the area where the food was. I'm spraying my hand because I am getting a lot of cocoons and small worms on my hands, and I don't know if it was from the previous bin or if it was from this bin, but I don't want to take the worms with me. And then I put the food right into the bait tray for collection. I did do a medium-sized feeding on this one, probably smaller than what I would normally do in the larger size flow-through system. But again, I wanted to attract the worms to the bait tray so that I can do the final selection of worms for the breeder bin. And that's really the update for the systems. As I've said before, when you get into the middle of the harvesting system, it's not much going on week to week. You're really just managing the water content, managing the food, making sure the bin isn't going stale, and just learning from the worms. I do thank you if you've gotten this far into the video. I always appreciate if you do like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. And I'll see you next week.